And welcome back into another episode of the Believe in Georgia Tech podcast. We're your co-hosts. That is RJ Schafer. I'm Jackson Caudell, coming to you on Monday, April 14th in the afternoon, a couple of days after Georgia Tech's wrapped up their spring game. Of course, as anybody might guess, that's going to be the main topic of conversation today. Also got some baseball talk to do, but before we do any of that, RJ, how you doing, man?
Feeling great. We get to talk about a Georgia Tech football win. If you want to look at it as a win and a loss, you can do that too. But
Well, I was going to say, technically it was a loss too, like if you want to look at it that way. So we kind of got to break it down from both sides. But a lot of winning for Georgia Tech this weekend. Spring game was good. The atmosphere was good. Like I said,
yeah,
I was there. Like it was a very fun atmosphere. I think that was the main point of the thing. Like give something for the fans, and they did that. Like that, I think it was mission accomplished on that front. Baseball swept Cal, so there was a lot of winning going on there. We'll obviously talk about the big game tomorrow. We all know what's coming up there. But before we do that, if you're watching this, haven't subscribed to the channel, if you're a new viewer, would love it if you would hit subscribe, hit the like button on the video. Come join the Believe in Georgia Tech family. It's grown a lot since we've been doing this, and it continues just to gather. We love talking Georgia Tech. We love doing just this show in general to make it for the fans. And if you want to come on board and be a part of that, we'd love it too. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review there. Tell us what we need to be doing better. Tell us just what your thoughts on the show. We love hearing back from you guys. Like a good show isn't good without good feedback and good viewers. So we appreciate all that from you guys. But I guess let's just dive right into it. Like the spring game was Saturday. It came down to a 2-point conversion. Team Swarm did have a chance to win it. Pass fell incomplete. Team Reckham took home the win. Look, I will just be upfront and saying it. I said this during our preview. Any takeaways I have are not some big giant takeaways from the team because there were a few players out, particularly at the receiver position. I mean, Eric Rivers, Isaiah Canyon, Malik Rutherford, those guys, Dean Patterson. Those are going to be four major contributors at wide receiver. So, like, when we talk about the receivers and the good day they had, which I'm going to because it's one of the bigger storylines, I think, from the whole day. I do think you have to put it into context of the guys that we're missing and, okay, are these guys going to play when the fall comes around? I think there's a good chance they will, but I think the question has to be asked. And there's obviously elements of the spring game as well that are hard to judge. I mentioned last week the defensive line is probably the toughest thing to gauge in a spring game because one, you can't sack the quarterback, you can't hit the quarterback. So and there were a few times I think they just wanted to run it. They did do the QB reads, and obviously Georgia Tech has a pretty diverse run game when it comes to the quarterback. They did run that a couple times. Obviously, you don't want to hit the quarterback during a spring game, especially with the ones that Georgia Tech does have. So it's always hard to gauge defensive line play, in my opinion. It's also hard to gauge linebacker play. The other reason for that is Georgia Tech didn't really run the ball. Like they were short with the running back room. Jamal Haynes obviously didn't play much. He doesn't need to play much. We talked about that last week. Like we don't need to see any of Jamal Haynes in this game. Trelane Maddox did play a pretty good bit, ran really physical. JP Powell obviously scored a touchdown. But there wasn't a whole lot of like normal Georgia Tech offense running the football. So from that perspective, and also that Georgia Tech didn't blitz. Like you're not going to blitz in a spring
yeah,
game. You're going to play a few vanilla coverages here and there. So linebackers are also very tough to judge. But that doesn't mean you don't have takeaways. And I think the first one for me is that like there's a chance Georgia Tech is pretty deep at receiver. I'm not going to stamp that as a guarantee. We've kind of talked about how there's a lot of inexperience, and I've already mentioned the guys that were out. But Zion Taylor had a huge day. I thought he looked very good. DeBron Gatling had a very big day as well. Bailey Stockton, I think, played pretty well. So they have them split up here, and as far as the stats go, like Stockton for Team Swarm, 6 catches, 107 yards. Zion Taylor, 5 catches, 117 yards, long of 58 yards. Also caught the double pass, which I have to say that was probably my favorite moment of the day. Was it yours? The double pass for the touchdown?
yeah. And I mean, and Key talked about that in the conference. Like sometimes you do just throw things out there in the spring game. Not like it's revealing your game plan. Like you just got to let the kids have fun. And I thought that was, pretty fun way to do it.
Yeah, I did too, and that was a pretty good pass by Jamal. I have to say as
Yeah,
well. I know Key said it was kind of a duck in the play. He was joking around and saying it was a bit of a duck of a throw for that, but actually for a tailback, I thought that was kind of impressive. And like Zahn getting in the end zone after that, like he had to dodge a couple defenders, but like I thought that was a really fun play for the day. But just some other numbers. JT Byrne, tight end, 4 catches, 31 yards. So in total, like I think, let's see here. Yeah, DeBron Gatling, 6 catches for 50 yards. He had 13 targets in this game. Now, some of that is obviously some of the shortened room receiver, but he played a much bigger role than maybe I gave him credit for, and that was encouraging to see. Like, again, I'll repeat myself again that, hey, there were a lot of guys out, and those 4 guys that were out are going to play a lot. But it is nice to see somebody step up and take hold of the spot that they're given and the opportunity that they're given and run with it. I thought he played really well. Luke Harpering, I thought played very well. Totaled 7 catches, nearly had, I think it was about 80 yards. And again, the running backs, there's not a lot to talk about. I thought JP Powell looked pretty good. He did have a 20-yard run. Maddox finished with 7 carries for 39 yards. Powell, 7 for 35. Daylon ended up having 8 carries for 32 yards. Again, there were some guys like Malachi Hosley didn't play in this game. So I thought overall, the receivers were pretty good. Anything on what I've said so far or anything new on your end?
Not really. It's just, especially on offense, like we saw Haynes King, not Jamal. But a lot of your biggest playmakers on offense this year, we didn't get to see in the spring game, and I think that creates a good amount of opportunity. Like we talked about, DeMaron Gatling. Like I think he looked pretty good out there. Obviously had 13 targets, which is a little crazy in the spring game, knowing that you want to limit your guys. But he had some pretty solid body control, and there were some other guys at receiver. I think Zion Taylor looked good too. Trey Maddox, caught some balls out of the backfield. I think overall, it was a decent day offensively. You didn't see a ton of Ben Guthrie, but Graham Knowles looked fine. Aaron Philo, like there was some busted plays, and I guess we can get to O line a little bit. Few low snaps, a few. Again, it's hard to judge some of these quote unquote sacks because you don't know if those would actually be sacks in those situations. It's just whenever they get within this amount of Aaron Philo, it's a sack. But I thought overall the offense played fine. I think the offensive line is still something where you're looking for some more uh, veterans in that group. You're looking for guys to show up because again, you got a lot of young guys in that group. I thought they played fine. I thought the receivers were really good though, and I think for what you had in the run game for the very limited attempts that you have, I thought Trey Maddox looked amazing. He was very physical on every single run. I think he gained yards on every single run that he had. He was just a beast throughout that game.
Yeah, like I loved how physical he ran. Some other standouts, I thought Omar Daniels had an interception, and if they hadn't, they stopped the play, but it would have been a pick six. Like that, it was a really good play. Picked off Philo, I believe that was one of Philo's interceptions. Um, Clayton Powell did pick off Graham Knowles. Graham kind of threw it across his body. I thought that was kind of one of the bigger mistakes. Like you just can't do that. And then AJ Cheeks did pick off Philo later in the game. But I thought overall, again, it can be hard to judge defenses in spring games. It's the environment doesn't always serve them because again, you're not going to blitz. You can't hit the quarterback. As soon as you even get near the quarterback, that they'll blow the play dead. So you can't really count them as statistics. But I thought the secondary did pretty well. Kelvin Hill, I thought was another guy that ended up playing pretty well. In the game. But another guy I did want to talk about was Aiden Burr. Like he ended up going. He hit three field goals. Where did my stats go? Okay, here we go. Aiden Burr ended up hitting 3 field goals in the game. First one was a 47-yard field goal. He had a 43-yarder and also had a 50-yarder. So I do want to say, as far as that goes, because we do remember he did hit like a 60, was it like a 60-yarder last year?
Yeah.
And obviously he had some struggles during the year. So like, again, sometimes spring game, that's a perfect example of spring game doesn't always translate to regular season. But I thought that's what you wanted to see. Like it would have been worse if I don't think we'd be saying the same thing if Aiden Burr missed all 3 of those kicks. It would be like, oh my God, what's happening here? So it's good to see him. it needs to translate to the regular season. Like Aiden Burr, he's been able to hit some kicks. He's talented. Just got to put it into the regular season. We both like the punters. Like for all Brent Key talked about Marshall Nichols, I thought he looked pretty good. Um, that to me were my takeaways from the spring game. I thought the QBs were fine. Like again, they weren't going to be asked to do a whole lot. I mean, Haynes King only played the first half. I thought Philo. I thought there were some times I think he took some chances, especially on the interceptions. He probably shouldn't have thrown either pass. I don't know if there maybe been some miscommunication or anything like that. I mentioned the Knowles throw earlier. You know, when Clayton Powley just kind of slid and caught it like that. That wasn't a great decision. But I don't think it was terrible. Running game, Maddox ran physical. Powell had a couple of good moments. Not a lot to take away from there just because of their lack of running in it. Receivers, given what they had to deal with, yeah, I thought it was a pretty good day. I thought Gatling looked pretty good, a lot better than I had thought. Zion Taylor, I think we probably should really be talking about him as a crucial part of the receiving core. Look, I know Eric Rivers, Rutherford, Dean Patterson, and Canyon are going to get the attention, but if Zion Taylor can step up and be a reliable guy, we got to see him play a little bit in the bowl game against Vanderbilt. So, look, if he can be that fifth guy, maybe like that would be huge for this team. And then Stockton being the sixth, like I think this group's pretty good at receiver. Actually, like that was one of my takeaways coming away from Saturday was I think they're fine at receiver. I think they like the talent that they have and whatnot. Offensive line, I thought was okay. Again, it can be kind of hard to judge since the environment of the game. I thought Braden Manley, I think he ended up having a pass deflection when he got pressure on the quarterback. I thought that was pretty good. Interior, I thought was fine. Vandenberg made a couple plays. You had your guys in the secondary making the interceptions. Daniels, Clayton Powley, we know what those guys are. It was good to see AJ Cheeks get an interception like that. That was pretty cool. Kelvin Hill, he tackled well. And then special teams, I thought overall was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, the other things I would want to talk about is I think the secondary overall, I think they were literally just flying around. I think there is, we talked about, the depth at wide receiver. I think you could say the same about the secondary. And that's something that we knew heading up into the spring game. Like we knew that we had very solid starters in the secondary, and you had some good depth guys, and they showed that. I mean, Kelvin Hill had himself a day. My boy Daquan White wasn't impressive statistically, but I think he had 2 pass breakups. He had a pretty good day, and you could just go down the list in the secondary of, guys who showed that they belonged. It wasn't really, I don't really think it was an offense or defensive dominated day, and no team like white or gold, no team really showed that.
Reckham and Swarm.
Reckham and
Excuse
Swarm.
you.
Yeah. No team showed that they were completely dominant. Granted, there were a lot of guys that played for both teams, so again, it doesn't really matter. But I thought special teams was really solid. Last year, we talked about Aiden Burr had that humongous field goal, but one underrated part of that game is there were a lot of special teams miscues in that game that, gets forgot about because that one Aiden Burr kick, and you didn't really see a lot of that today.
And
Overall,
I think we were guilty of that. Like I was just amazed he hit that field goal.
I mean, and it's still impressive. It's just,
Yeah.
you kind of overlook the other stuff, and now that we're looking back on it, maybe should have paid more attention to those special teams miscues. But I thought special teams looked great today. I thought secondary looked great. I don't have a ton of insight in the defensive line and linebackers. I think wide receivers deep. I think quarterback is deep. I think running back is deep. I think a lot of what we expected heading into this game happened. I think we know what kind of roster Georgia Tech has, and you're on your way for a good football team in the fall.
There was nothing in the game that shocked me. Like there was nothing that like, oh my God, no way. Like, was I a little surprised at how well Gatling played? A little. Like I haven't heard his name mentioned a lot this spring. And again, Georgia Tech has a lot of bodies at receiver that they're trying to figure out the rotation for. But look, he played really well. But I wouldn't say I was shocked by it. There was nothing. Yeah, to your point, there was nothing I think that just surprised or shocked me in this game.
Yeah, I mean, like Kelvin Hill, he had a really good game, but
yeah.
That's to be expected. Somebody's going to have a good game, and Kelvin's a good player.
Yep. So, any more takeaways from this? I don't have any, and it's look. Next time we see them on a football field, it will be, or I guess I'll see them at the practice field sometime in July. But look, 4 months until they open with Colorado. it still feels a little far away, but we're getting closer. And then the next time they'll be at Bobby Dodd will be the game home opener against Gardner Webb, and then the next week they play Clemson. So some big early games. I came away from this game I think this is a good roster. I think this is a team that can win some football games this year. I still haven't settled on my final number because I'm still doing some research and some look around on the other teams in the ACC, especially obviously the ones on Georgia Tech's schedule. I think this has a chance to be a really good football team, but they got to put it all together. The spring portal opens on Wednesday, so we'll see what they do there. It should be noted that Syed Gibbs is going to enter the transfer portal. He played a little bit this past year. Was a bit inconsistent, but like he made some plays. He had a pretty good game against North Carolina, and I think he ended up having a sack in that game. And I think he actually had a decent game against Notre Dame. Again, he's a pretty decent player. I don't think it just kills you that he's entering the portal. And like we said, the secondary ended up having a good day, so it's just maybe some movement around there. But any thoughts on that?
Oh, I think you're set for a good spot. A lot of other teams you see, even in Power Five, even in the ACC, like they're heading into the transfer portal and they got needs. They need a lot of spots they need to fill, and Georgia Tech I don't think has that. I mean, a couple fill-in guys here and there, a couple of veteran guys, and I think you're fine. But also, if you get nobody in the spring transfer portal, I also don't think you're mad. I think you got a good roster heading into the fall.
That'd be a topic for another show that we'll get into. But so not a super long show today, but we do want to wrap up with some baseball talk because this team, again, we've talked about it. This team's really freaking good.
Yeah.
They swept their third ACC opponent this year. It wasn't like just a completely dominating sweep, but they did handle Cal. Won 8-5 on Friday night. They run ruled them in the 8th inning on Saturday, 15-5. And yesterday was pretty close. I actually thought they were going to drop that game yesterday, but they ended up pulling it out. 29-7. They are the number one as far as record goes. They are the number one team in the standings. They are, I think, up to 13th now in RPI and in the D1 baseball rankings. And I know there are a lot of college baseball rankings. So, like, I use the D1. I think those guys do a really good job over there. So, just if Georgia Tech's ranked anywhere else, like that's where I'm getting number 14 from. It's from D1. That's the rankings I use. Anybody else is welcome to use the ones that they like to use. But so they're up to number 14 there. They're the third highest ranked team in the ACC. Clemson is, I think it's fourth actually. Clemson, Florida State, and North Carolina are right above them. Again, this team just they continue to hit. The pitching was pretty solid. I thought Tate McKee was pretty good Friday night. Brady Jones was pretty solid on Saturday. I thought the bullpen mildly somewhat struggled yesterday. It's not like a huge complaint, but the hitting wasn't as good yesterday, so I think that may be why I'm focusing on the pitching. And we all know who they face tomorrow. Georgia, who's ranked number 5 in the latest D1 rankings. Georgia is a very, very good team. It could be an offensive showdown. Like, Georgia is very, very good when it comes to hitting the baseball. Like, Georgia Tech is good. I think the thing I want to see is, like, does Kyle Lodice come back and play? Like, he's missed the past few games. He is obviously an integral part of Georgia Tech's lineup. Von Lackey was leading off, which he did pretty good. I thought, Drew Burris was good. I mean, that's stating the obvious, I think, but he was pretty good over the weekend. It's going to be tough Tuesday. The game is at Truist Park for anybody that is going. It's not the usual, like, play one game in Atlanta, play one game at Athens, and then play one game neutral. Like, it's just a midweek game this year. So it's obviously going to be a tough matchup. This would be the best win of the season. I think if you were going to make a criticism of Georgia Tech, it's against the two best teams they played, Clemson and Auburn. They're 1-3. So I think they still have a little bit to prove, in my opinion, against the best teams because they were competitive all series against Clemson, and that one win was, like, emphatic. Like, I think 18-2 was the final score. You gave the last game away. You had a lot of opportunities to win that game one, and that's the other thing. Like, they kind of let the Auburn game get away from them. So it's like, okay, these late game situations against these big time teams, like, what does it look like? Like, that's kind of one of the things I'm looking for tomorrow. If Georgia Tech has the lead, or if they're down a run, or if it's a really close game, like, what do they do? Like, because they haven't, they let some games get away from them against Clemson and Auburn. So I'll definitely be watching that. But what are your baseball thoughts for this past weekend and what's coming up tomorrow?
Yeah, I think your guys that are hot right now need to stay hot. Like Alex Hernandez, he
Yes.
was ACC Freshman of the Week. He was 9 of 13, I believe. He was absolutely incredible in that Cal series. Mason Patel, obviously, as always, was on fire. Had the save. I think went 2 innings in that game. I just think Georgia has. I mean, I think Georgia Tech can compete with any team in in the country. Like, I think we're at that level now where there's not any series where I go into it and I'm saying, "Oh, we're going to lose. Oh, this is going to happen." I think Georgia has a great formula. I think they're a great pitching team. I think they're also a great hitting team, like Georgia Tech. I don't know if I have a prediction, but I think you need your guys that are hot right now to stay hot, and I think that's possible. I think Von Lackey, like you said in the leadoff, he's fast. Get yourself a catcher that can hit leadoff. Don't see that very often, but I think there are guys up on this plays. It's just is it going to happen? It's not a series. It's not ACC play, but this is probably your biggest for a while, and I want to see what they can do.
Yeah, and they after this game they do play Miami this weekend, and Miami is kind of a weird team. Like they didn't start off the year very well, but I believe they just took 2 or 3 from Duke this past weekend, and Duke's a pretty good team. And Miami is always a baseball team that has a good bit of talent. They don't always live up to it, but like Miami has historically been at least since I've been alive, has been a pretty good ACC baseball program. So look, and it's on the road, so like nothing's easy in the ACC. It's a pretty deep conference, so like just don't take it for granted. But they've won 6 straight ACC games. They've swept 2 straight opponents. I mean, Cal and Stanford both. And the only ACC series loss they have this year is to Clemson, is the Clemson series we mentioned earlier. So excited to see this team compete. But yeah, again, the one small criticism I would have of them right now is just some of the late game stuff against the big time teams. Other than that, like I do believe this is a team that can compete with anybody, because while I can criticize some of those games, they were in every one of those games. That's impressive to me. Is like, they lost by 2 to Clemson. They lost in that first game. They blew that lead late, and then they blew the lead against Auburn. So they're at least in those games. Like, it's not like I would be a whole lot more concerned if Clemson swept Georgia Tech and like did it by a lot, and then if Auburn like took Georgia Tech to the woodshed, like that would concern me. But I do think this team can compete with anybody, and I'm excited to see them do it tomorrow at Truist Park. Anything else? Anything we're missing? No basketball transfer portal news. We're still we've obviously seen some entries. Nate George, Soiree, Duncan Powell, and Darian Sutton have gone to the portal. Nobody's been brought in, so we're still. Somebody at some point is going to get brought in. That's a topic for another day. But so nothing on that front. Again, football just wrapped up spring, so we're not really going to hear much from them outside of the transfer portal anyway coming up. But that is going to be our show today. Wanted to give a little look at the spring game. Big baseball has been played and got some big games coming up this weekend, but appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, if you're new to the channel, would love it if you would subscribe, like the video, tell your friends about it, tell your Georgia Tech. All the other Georgia Tech fans, lead them to the show. We love growing this and love talking about Georgia Tech and doing this. So we really appreciate you guys. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review there. Leave any comments, any feedback, any advice you'd love to give us. And we really appreciate it. And thank you for tuning in.